Good evening. Welcome to After Party. Tonight's guest is Evita Duffy Alfonso. But first, the news. Our nation teeters on the brink of madness, sent into this time of tribulation by the promise of America's next great memoir, American Canto, the autobiographical account of Olivia Nuzzi's alleged affair with then presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Kennedy denies this love was at all requited. Nuzzi, though, refers to him in this aspirational act of literature as the politician, an act so brave and yet so subtle. It sends the mind reeling, spinning, burning with empathy. And the prose so purple it'd make a Wyoming sunset seethe with the envy of 1,000 spurned New York magazine writers. Imagine where power like that could take us, harnessed into this grand project we call democracy, or perhaps into the pages of our quintessential millennial memoir. Without further ado, we turn now to Vanity Fair, where American Canto was excerpted today. I would take a bullet for you, the politician said. He always said that. Please don't say that, I said. I always said that. From his mouth, the bullet theoretical launched the bullet possible. I did not like to think about it. About the armed man at his speech, or the armed man who broke into his home, or the armed men he paid to guard him from armed men who sought to harm him. Well, the federal government denied his pleas for protection from the security agency whose modern protocols were carved by the same bullets that cut boughs from his family tree and cut the track of the American experiment. I did not like to think about it, just as later I would not like to think about the worm in his brain that other people found so funny. I loved his brain. I hated the idea of an intruder therein. Others thought he was a madman. He was not quite mad the way they thought, but I loved the private ways that he was mad. I loved that he was insatiable in all ways, as if he would swallow up the whole world just to know it better if he could. He made me laugh, but I winced when he joked about the worm. Baby, don't worry, he said. It's not a worm. A doctor he trusted had reviewed the scans of his brain, obtained by the New York Times, he said, and concluded that the shadowy figure was likely not a parasite at all. He sighed. It was too late to interfere with what had already vaulted from the sphere of meme to the sphere of screwy legend, but at least I did not have to worry about the worm that was not a worm in his brain. We turn now to a postscript from Ryan Lizza, just released. Lizza is, of course, Nuzzi's ex-lover, who was violated by this alleged lust for Kennedy, and he has since claimed on, where else, his Substack that Nuzzi was, quote, sleeping with Mark Sanford. Sanford, yes, of hiking the Appalachian Trail fame. Lizza now takes us to the scene of a bedroom, their bedroom, where he finds a missive scribbled on Kimpton Hotel stationery. As I tidied up the desk, something on the Kimpton stationery caught my eye. I started to read, quote, if I swallowed every drop of water from the tower above your house, Olivia had written, I would still thirst for you. Unfortunately, the lack of a water tower on our Georgetown home's roof ruled me out as the note's intended recipient. I flipped to another page and saw a name and the first line of an unfinished love letter to him that included enough details to confirm a physical relationship and the hint of some kind of falling out. My heart stopped when I realized who he was. All right, everyone. This, dear friends, is Washington, D.C., where moralizing hipsters cloak their burning desires for control over your life in ironic detachment and bemused neutrality, all while behaving privately like people you would let nowhere near your own children if you knew what was actually going on. So we can conclude from these two beautiful, nay, historic excerpts that Olivia Nuzzi and Ryan Lizza actually were perfect for each other. All right, next. Evita Duffy Alfonso will be with us. But first, if you've ever read the label on a typical bag of chips, you know it's often a science experiment of seed oils, MSG, artificial dyes, and mystery ingredients. Masa is part of the growing movement to bring back real food. Masa's chips contain just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Not only do these chips avoid the bad stuff, they also taste incredible too. You know that I think they taste incredible. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash, bloat, or gross, sluggish feeling afterwards. You won't find yourself binging and feeling hungry. Personally, of course, my favorite flavor of Masa is the lime. I also really like the churro and the spicy habanero flavor. But if you love Masa, you will also love Vandy Crisps, which I love so much. Vandy is Masa's sister company. They make the most delicious 3-ingredient potato chips that I've ever tasted. Literally that I have ever tasted. My absolute favorite is the barbecue. I also love the original. So good. So if you're ready to give Masa or Vandy a try, use code AFTERPARTY for 25% off your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? Masa and Vandy are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. So stop by and pick up a couple bags before they're gone. We're back now with independent journalist Evita Duffy Alfonso. Evita, I'm sorry for what you just had to listen to, but thank you for being here.
I love how seriously that journalist was taking this entire story. That was the best part, the sincerity of the Vanity Fair article.
That was Nuzzi's writing. That was an excerpt.
Oh, okay.
That was her. That's how seriously she takes herself.
Got it. And I will say, Emily, I have tried Masa chips. My little sister is a Maha movement fanatic, and she said they were amazing and that they're all clean. So I tried them. They were actually very good.
It's insane when you look on the back of the thing. Like, this is an actual experience I've had. You look on the back of the bag and you're like, there's no way this is just 3 ingredients. It makes you feel like an idiot for eating anything else.
Oh, yeah. That's why people are fat. I did a whole thing with Christian Justice, our former colleague at the Federalist. It's not the high calorie count. It is all of the chemicals that we are constantly ingesting. So a Maha chip, you can count me in.
There you go. All right. Well, Evita, on board the Masa chip movement. Now, Evita, there's some serious news that I want to get your take on because we're getting more and more updates from the story about Thomas Crooks, the alleged shooter of Donald Trump, who, of course, got him on the head. In the ear, literally shot the president of the United States in the head during a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania in July of 2024. New details are emerging in that case from sources talking to Tucker Carlson and Miranda Devine. We're going to get to that. We are also going to get to hilarious and tragic updates in the Jeffrey Epstein email dump from his estate to the House Oversight Committee last week, some new Trump poll numbers, and maybe a little bit of Scott Galloway on Bill Maher about what remote work is doing to younger generations of Americans. So, Evita, let's go ahead and start with Donald Trump's remarks today in the Oval Office on the Epstein release. So whether House Republicans should vote to compel the release of more documents in the government's possession related to Jeffrey Epstein. Here's the president.
You urged House Republicans to vote in favor of this Epstein release bill they're going to vote on tomorrow. I just want to be super clear on your position. Do you want to see that pass the Senate? Would you sign that bill if it gets to your desk?
I do want to. Here's what I want. We have nothing to do with Epstein. The Democrats do. All of his friends were Democrats. You look at this Reid Hoffman, you look at Larry Summers, Bill Clinton, they went to his island all the time, and many others. They're all Democrats. All I want for people to recognize the great job that I've done on pricing, on affordability, because we brought prices way down, but they go way lower, on energy, on ending 8 wars and another one coming pretty soon, I believe. We've done a great job. And I hate to see that deflect from the great job we've done.
Okay. So obviously, Evita, this comes after the Trump administration and the president himself first stoked intrigue about Epstein, and you and I would agree with that, reasonably so, over the course of several years, especially in the context of saying Bill Clinton was implicated, potentially Larry Summers, who we'll get to in just one moment, of course, was implicated. And now the president says, all right, well, after he got a lot of criticism, the administration got a lot of criticism from both you and I for some stonewalling over the last several months. He's saying, yes, go ahead, release them. And Evita, I'm wondering if your interpretation of his pivot here is not necessarily in response to like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie continuing to hammering the drum so much as it is the election results over the last couple of weeks, where it seems like Trump, he's mentioned it a couple of times since the off-year elections, where Dems ran up some significant margins, higher than expected margins in places like New Jersey and Virginia, that the president realizes affordability and economics are on the minds of average voters. So what do you ascribe this pivot?
Well, I mean, I think he wants to talk about his wins. You know, I was just comparing the price of gas. I mean, it's gone down by $1.50 in Wisconsin, where I'm doing my driving, set compared to the Biden admin, the worst of the worst. So, I mean, I understand why he wants to talk about his wins, right? This is a president that always wants to talk about his wins. I will say this, Emily, I'm not convinced that this is really going to cause any satisfaction anyways. Like, I think there's a move to, okay, we can't be having Jeffrey Epstein in the news cycle every other day is going through the president's mind. But is a release of files and private communications between Epstein and random business leaders or politicians going to help anything? I think what the American people want to know really is, was Jeffrey Epstein attached to American or Israeli or other foreign intelligence? We want to know that. That's the question that everybody wants answered. And releasing private communications is not going to do that. So that the prevailing question, the big problem, the elephant in the room is going to continue. And I hope that the president and people around him realize that.
Well, yeah, this is an important point. And I wonder if that's part of what's factoring into his decision, because you can either have a world where the Epstein news cycle continues and you look like you're stonewalling, or you can have a world where the Epstein news cycle continues and you look like you are engaging in disclosure. And so I feel like there's no either or, right? Like there's no both, or there's no third option. As I'm stumbling through this, I still have the worm in my brain about Olivia Nuzzi and the Kennedy brain worm, allegedly. But there's no third way. You're going to have you're going to have continued drip drips in the Epstein case no matter what. He has hacked emails that were leaked. Republicans released 20,000 from the estate that are going to continue to be put together like pieces of a puzzle going into the future. People are going to continue to get asked questions about the relationship with Epstein. It's just not fading away. And so without a third option, maybe you might as well at least look like you're on the side of disclosure.
Yeah, well, I mean, and maybe that's what's running through their minds. And I think a lot of Americans, especially conservatives who put in this admin, voted for President Trump, will say, you know, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt in a lot of situations. I'm somebody who, when I look at the evidence, do I think Jeffrey Epstein killed himself? It's really hard for me to believe that. But if Dan Bongino and Kash Patel are saying Jeffrey Epstein definitely killed himself, okay, I might be willing to buy that. I'd like to see some more evidence than just, a tape with a minute missing out of it, or however long it was that there was a gap in the film. But we need to know the heart of the question, right? When Alex Acosta says Jeffrey Epstein belonged to intelligence and that's why I gave him a sweetheart deal in Florida, what does that mean? Who are you talking about? Who told you he belongs to intelligence? Like, these are the questions that need to be answered. And so, I mean, Emily, that might be in the calculation that we want this to go away. We want to act like we're on the side of disclosure. It's not going to go away without a lot more information coming out. Also, the decision that this admin has made to not prosecute anyone. There's Prince Andrew is now completely off the hook after being, very credibly accused of assaulting a minor, thanks to Jeffrey Epstein. And now he's just free to travel internationally because I guess the United States government is no longer pursuing charges against anyone. This is all very bizarre. People are going to keep asking these questions.
And Prince Andrew, of course, we're not allowed to call Prince Andrew anymore because he's been stripped of his prince title over this, basically. So, Evita, on that note, I guess I'm curious why you think this is sticky with MAGA, because my read on the last maybe 6 or so months since Pam Bondi and Bindergate is that the administration and Trump himself thought that if they said, all right, case closed, we can't go any further without harming people, et cetera, it would kind of fade into the background. I don't think anybody was under the illusion that it would just go away, but that it would sort of fade a bit into the background and people would stop making so much noise about it. But why do you think it is? I remember talking to a congressman before August recess, Republican congressman before August recess, right after they passed the beautiful bill, one big beautiful bill, as they called it. They were saying they did expect to get questions about Epstein and that people in their district do care about it, which is normally not what you would hear from Republican congressmen about, some issue if they thought it was a distraction. So why is it, do you think people continue, like MAGA people, continue to care so much about the Epstein case?
Well, this gets to the heart of what MAGA is. MAGA is anti-corruption. MAGA is a full populist revolt against the deep state. And when we think about what's animating MAGA, well, people are thinking about the murder of John F. Kennedy. We're going back to the Promise software scandal, to Muskegon, to every single government malfeasance instance that there is, and there are many of them. And Jeffrey Epstein is especially animating because he's recent. The people who are involved are still alive. The people who are involved, many of them are still in government and ruling over us. And so, okay, we're not going to get to the bottom of who killed John F. Kennedy. We're not going to know the ins and outs of what role, if any, our government or another government played. But we should be able to get to the bottom of Jeffrey Epstein because his co-conspirator is currently alive and in prison. A bunch of other people who were friends and associates of his still have lots of power in this country and money. And presumably we should be able to get to the bottom of this. And for some reason, we're not. And that's very frustrating to MAGA, who, again, is anti-establishment and is animated by not just this issue, but decades of government malfeasance and scandal. And this is the one thing where we've said we want the truth on this top, just this one. Just give us Jeffrey Epstein. And they haven't felt satisfied by that.
And let's now turn to the state documents, 20,000 of which were released by the House Oversight Committee, actually Republicans on the House Oversight Committee last week under James Comer, which reveal, as Matthew Stoller put it, it's basically like if the guys from American Psycho were emailing each other on their iPads. That's what we're looking at as the curtain has been pulled back on their many emails back and forth with Jeffrey Epstein, Epstein's correspondence with people like Larry Summers, Michael Wolff, Ghislaine Maxwell herself, and other very wealthy, very powerful people. I want to focus just for one moment here on Larry Summers. Let's put F7 up on the screen. This is actually an article from the Harvard Crimson. Summers was, of course, the president of Harvard, during which time he steered lots of money from Jeffrey Epstein to Harvard. So actually, this is what the article picks up on from the emails. When former Harvard president Lawrence H. Summers was pursuing a romantic relationship with a woman he described as a mentee, he turned to a longtime associate for guidance, convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. I'm going to keep reading from this Crimson article because it is just so disgusting in so many different ways. Here it is. In a sequence of texts and emails between November 2018 and July 5th, 2019, think about those dates. That's the end of Epstein's life. Summers turned to Epstein for advice on his pursuit of the woman. Epstein was quick to chime in with assurance and suggestions, describing himself in November 2018 message as Summers' wingman. The messages became public, etc. Now, here is another one. Summers, who has been married since 2005, told Epstein he thought the woman was reluctant to leave him because she valued his professional connections. Epstein told him in one June 2019 text, he is doomed to be with you. Now, bear in mind, Larry Summers was the Treasury Secretary under, guess which president? Bill Clinton. President Bill Clinton. Now, Summers, of course, as we mentioned already, is married, at least was married, at the time of these emails back and forth. Epstein at one point said, she's already beginning to sound needy, smiley face. Nice. Just absolutely disgusting. Disgusting. And want to add one more thing that Matthew Stoller figured out, and everyone should subscribe to Big, his newsletter, if they haven't yet. He noticed that this woman is actually a daughter of a Belt and Road official in China. And Summers is basically like, I want to just use the phrasing that Stoller had on it because it was so, he put it so well. Basically, that as Summers was engaged in this weird back and forth. I'm sorry, it was Ryan Grimm who put it this way. As he's steering this money from her dad, he's also trying to sleep with the daughter. So it's like she explicitly, as Stoller puts it, she, quote, explicitly thanked Summers for supporting her dad.
Yeah.
What the hell, Evita? Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, well, and what's amazing to me is that he still has a job. He's like a tenured professor at Harvard still. And the Crimson Review reported on that as well, which, by the way, I think they're a student paper. So kudos to them.
Yes.
For this reporting. It's really awesome. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible that he's basically going to the expert of sleaziness and inappropriate behavior to get advice on how to be sleazy and inappropriate with somebody who is his underling. And I think he's getting pretty good advice from Jeffrey Epstein. And this goes to show just how many powerful people Jeffrey Epstein was in connection with. I mean, a former official in the Clinton admin, the president of Harvard University, the most powerful prestigious university in the country, who still has a very powerful role at that university. So yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And I think more and more people are going to be exposed for their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. There's a lot more that I think is going to come out.
Yeah, and Summers has just in the last several hours said he is now taking a step back from public life. And I found that Ryan Grimm post I was looking for. He mentions, quote, Larry Summers pursuing the daughter of a top Chinese official involved with Belt and Road and supporting him in order to sleep with his daughter is, I mean, what do we even do with this? The Center for American Project wants to put Summers in charge of major parts of its goofy, quote, Project 2029. That's real. Summers was supposed to have like a major oversight role over something called Project 2029 to come up with the Democratic Party's, essentially its answer to Project 2025 if a Democratic president is elected in 2028. And Evita, these emails, besides the one that I just read, it is a constant back and forth between Larry Summers and Jeffrey Epstein. You could even like eliminate the whole Belt and Road aspect of this, which, as Stoller says, if he has a security clearance, it should be out the freaking window at this point because he's doing all this on a damn Gmail. On a Gmail, he is going back and forth with Jeffrey Epstein, who, to your point about intelligence connections, Evita, we have seen in the hacked emails, and Dropsite has lots of stories on this, running around with a hoop of rock, the former defense minister of Israel, prime minister of Israel, manipulating geopolitics. And here's your former Treasury Secretary, former president of Harvard, getting relationship advice, bouncing ideas constantly off of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, the Robert Maxwell, angle is also fascinating. I mean, that's the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, who was a time girlfriend, and is basically a unconfirmed but confirmed, Mossad asset. So yes. The ties here are very explicit to intelligence. We just have to confirm them. I'll say this about President Trump. I think if they had something like a smoking gun on him that President Trump was involved in trafficking of children, like with Jeffrey Epstein, we would know about it. Like I do believe that whatever the reason is for President Trump not wanting a lot of these files to come out initially, wanting to remove, all the focus on it. I don't think that he is somehow a pedophile. I'm not going down that path. And I think it's interesting that when he's talking about releasing the files now, he's saying, okay, you want to go, Democrats? Let's release them because there's a lot of your friends who were implicated here. And he's right about that. And this is the thing about blackmail and intelligence is they're getting dirt on everyone. Okay, you want to release the files? We're all going down. And it's a problem for Democrats to make this an issue of President Trump and Republicans when clearly Jeffrey Epstein was tied to Democrats, was getting blackmail on Democrats. In my opinion, he probably was. And probably had more, I think he had more friends with Democrats than he did Republicans. If you just look at the number of people he was associated with, these are Democrat voters and donors by and large. So, yeah, I mean, I think Trump's like, you want to go, let's go. And I don't think Democrats are going to like the results here.
No, I mean, clearly, if they wanted if they thought this stuff was more damaging to Donald Trump than to themselves, they would have released it during the Biden administration in all likelihood. But what is the one entity that Republicans and Democrats are incentivized to cover up for alike? It's the intelligence community. And so I think that's why there's clear reluctance, whether Republicans or Democrats are in office, to divulge everything. But we have to be careful not to get distracted by sort of the tawdry details and stay focused on, to your point, Evita, obviously the consequences for foreign policy and for domestic policy too. So let's actually read this other email where Larry Summers, this is in October of 2016, this is F8, says, Jeff, how plausible is idea that Trump is real cocaine user? Epstein replies, can someone from the development office show Rothschild around Harvard sat? I mean, Larry Summers responds, yes, let's briefly discuss. Can you have her write me? Incredible stuff. Here's another one from Jonathan Farkas, who is married to a department store heiress. I believe that's how he came into all of his money, a fixture on the New York socialite scene, apparently. Amazing. He is married to Summers Farkas, who is served on the committee to choose Trump's White House fellows, also confirmed recently to be U.S. ambassador to Malta. So her husband, Farkas, is going back and forth in 2017 with Epstein about his paramour, about his mistress, essentially. And at one point just says, Jeffrey, please help me here. Is she a hooker? Jeffrey, please help me here. Is she a hooker? Epstein, by the way, says he knows that she is notorious, careful, she is notorious, etc. I mean, this is, you've had some glimpses into this world just because of like your family has been in this world a bit. One of the few political families that remains normal. But this seems almost unbelievable. Like it seems stuff you couldn't actually even write. Well,
and Emily, this is why you're like, why is MAGA fixated on Jeffrey Epstein? It's like this gets to the heart of the issue. Like we feel like our elite class is corrupted. It's rotten to the core. And the people want to know the truth. They want it to come out because they feel in their bones that we are being ruled by really evil people. And a lot of that, I mean, even I look at people make fun of Pizzagate a lot. It was crazy. It was a conspiracy. And yes, some of Pizzagate was a conspiracy. But what wasn't a conspiracy were the emails and the cooking. And I mean, some of that stuff was actually real, that leaders in our government, people close to the Clintons, were involved in some very bizarre behavior. So I don't know. I think that people just, they feel like a reckoning needs to happen. And Trump was part of it and they wanted to go farther.
So yeah, just on the Pizzagate point, what is real from all of that, despite where that conspiracy theory went, is the art collection was absolutely insane. The Podesta art collection was completely insane and disgusting and reprehensible and went far beyond just the sort of sophisticated palate of a cosmopolitan elite. And that was kind of the kernel that all of the rest of the stuff exploded from, which ended up being very convenient for the Clintons and the Podestas, by the way, because some of the real stories about this disgusting art collection and how normalized everyone partying at the Podesta house around it was, they could easily then chalk up as a distraction, or that they had a nice distraction to say, well, this is a crazy conspiracy theory, which a lot of it was. A lot of it was a crazy conspiracy theory.
I mean, if you look at thank you for saying the Podesta paintings were grotesque. If you look them up, it's children in very compromising positions. They are naked and chained or being abused. I mean, it's an overt glorification of child abuse and pedophilia. Like that's just what it was. And for some reason, I mean, he was literally profiled on the art in his house by like a reputable magazine. I think it was the Architecture Digest. Is that right? I forget.
It might have been. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he was having people over to his house for parties. Why is this normal? Why is that like a normal thing that nobody thought was weird in Washington, D.C.? Why is that? Like, it's a question that people have, and I think it's a fair one. And it's not a conspiracy that he's clearly a weirdo, a sicko, and a lot of people think it's normal in that city.
Right. And it's a great point. Before we take a quick break, Evita, the other thing I wanted to note is just you have these very, very powerful men so casually emailing back and forth with Epstein about women. And I think that's very interesting in and of itself that, you know, you have Epstein referring to himself as Larry Summers' wingman, and Summers is eager to have these conversations, to pick Epstein's brain. Epstein is colluding with Michael Wolff, or is better said as Michael Wolff is colluding with Epstein. Epstein was clearly trying to stir up rumors about Donald Trump to Michael Wolff, who was obviously working on a book about Donald Trump, a kind of hit piece book on Donald Trump, and just the casualness. I mean, you see it right there. This is a man who is convicted. This is a man who is openly kind of cavorting with intelligence. And here you have very, very powerful people. We're talking about socialites. We're talking about the former president of Harvard, former Treasury Secretary, just bouncing questions about their mistresses off of him. It's very telling. I mean, don't you think that detail just sort of on its face is very telling?
Well, and I think it's especially, I'm sorry, it's just so telling of the left as well. I mean, these are like Democrat men, leaders in the party. Bill Clinton, of course, is one of them, who was very close to Jeffrey Epstein and was the president of the United States and addressed the DNC in this last cycle. And they're the champions of women. And of course, they're not champions of women. They are abusers of women in many cases, at least the ones who are associated with Jeffrey Epstein. And there is a deep hypocrisy in that.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with Evita Duffy Alfonso in just one moment. But first, over the years, I have been clear about this. I'm not just pro-birth, I'm pro-life. And being pro-life, it's amazing. It means standing with mothers, not only before their baby is born, but long after. And that is exactly why I partner very proudly with the wonderful people over at Preborn. Preborn doesn't just save babies. They make motherhood abundantly possible. They provide free ultrasounds and share the truth of the gospel with women in crisis. And then they stay with real practical help, including financial support for up to 2 years after the baby is born. Amazing. This is what true Christ-centered compassion looks like, not just for the baby, but for the mother too. And here's where you can make a difference. Just $28 provides a free life-saving ultrasound, one chance for a mother to see her baby. And when she does, she's twice as likely to choose life. That is so fantastic. Preborn is trying to save 70,000 babies this year, 70,000. So don't just say you're pro-life, live it. Help save babies and support mothers today. Go to preborn.com/Emily or call 855-601-2229. That's preborn.com/Emily. Certainly love Preborn. We are back now with independent journalist Evita Duffy Alfonso, whose reaction I need to get to recent reporting from Tucker Carlson on Friday, and then Miranda Devine in the New York Post today about the case of Thomas Matthew Crooks, who obviously shot President Trump. Whether or not he acted alone is still in question. We have had so little information released about the investigation into Thomas Crooks, and into this vacuum, new reports from Tucker Carlson and Miranda Devine entered. Now, on Friday, Tucker reported on source material, and I want to focus on these sources in particular, Evita, because there's a lot to break down about where this information may be coming from. So Tucker posted about a 30-minute documentary on Friday. Everyone should go and watch it. It is a pretty quick thing to consume. He said, quote, "In late September, we received a tip from a source. He told us he gained access to some of Crooks's accounts, tools commonly used by private investigators. were part of how the source got his or her hands on the information. And Tucker said the key lead was using Crooks's phone number, which was listed in documents that had been obtained from America First Legal, obviously Stephen Miller's group before he went into the administration. Now, Miranda Devine's report sources this information to, quote, an enterprising source who uncovered Crooks's hidden digital footprint. The source told Miranda the danger Crooks posed was visible for years in public online spaces. His radicalization, violent rhetoric, and obsession with political violence were all documented under his real name. The threat wasn't hidden. So, Evita, some of the information that was uncovered by the source who used, again, we're talking about private investigator tools, certainly what the FBI would have had access to at the bare minimum, and we certainly know the FBI would have had access to more, even via subpoena power. You have public posts on an account associated with Crooks's phone number and email that start as being pro-Trump, and then in 2020, flip to being virulently anti-Trump. The pro-Trump posts, or the pro-Trump era in Crooks's life, is very violent. He's posting explicit calls for violence. It would be unimaginable to think this hadn't tripped someone's radar up at the FBI at the time. Maybe they really are that bad. I actually doubt that. But the FBI, either way, said after, this was when they were testifying, just a couple of weeks after, Miranda points this out, a week later, so this is a week after the shooting, this is a week after Chris Wray told Congress that the Bureau had found nothing in Crooks's online history that, quote, pointed to a motive or political ideology. A week later, Wray's deputy, Paul Abate, told Congress that comments posted on one of Crooks's social media accounts, quote, appear to reflect anti-Semitic and anti-immigration themes to espouse political violence and are described as extreme in nature. We now know those comments started in 2019, especially, as being sort of anti-immigration, anti-Semitic, and then became violently anti-Trump, and that was not disclosed. Are you buying, Evita, that they only had seen Crooks's posting that was sort of right-coded pro-Trump?
I mean, I'm not buying it at all. I mean, this is the Biden FBI who told us that Christopher Wray testified to Congress, and he essentially lied by omission by not telling us the full picture, that this kid starting in 2020 became radically anti-Trump, violently anti-Trump. I think what Tucker Carlson is calling for here, if you watch the video, there's a lot of information, but really good information. It's really succinct. We just want to know the truth from this FBI. We've got really bad information from the Biden FBI. Now into the Trump FBI, we're asking for information. Who were the FBI agents who were at the gun range that Thomas Crooks also happened to go to? Did they ever make contact with him? Was the FBI aware of the violent rhetoric that Thomas Crooks was espousing under his real name? We have surveillance. Our federal agencies have surveillance for this kind of rhetoric and behavior online, and they certainly compile lists of people to watch out for. Were they aware of him? And if not, why weren't they aware of him? These are like very simple questions that can be answered readily by our current FBI. And for some reason, Kash Patel has told Congress, specifically Ron Johnson, who's been asking for this information for a long time, my senator in Wisconsin, that he can't give the information because there's a trial, an upcoming trial. Well, I don't know who they're prosecuting because Thomas Crooks is dead.
Well, another detail from all of this is, well, actually, why don't we just let Tucker Carlson say it? Let's roll this out of Tucker discussing Crooks's online presence.
The digital comments we obtained were posted between 2019 and 2020, when Thomas Crooks was between 15 and 17 years old. They show two things. First, that Thomas Crooks was not some secretive lone wolf who never warned anyone that he was planning violence, just the opposite. Second, they show a man who started out as a radical Trump supporter whose views on the president changed completely during COVID. The FBI lied about that fact and pretended that Crooks was a right-winger. At 1:17 a.m. on July 20th, 2019, Crooks commented on a CNN video. He said Donald Trump was the literal definition of patriotism. 7 hours later, he commented on an MSNBC video. He wrote, "I hope a quick, painful death to all the deplorable immigrants and anti-Trump congresswomen who don't deserve anything this country has given them." That These sorts of comments continued for months and became increasingly violent. And yet, in early 2020, Crooks seemed to change radically. On January 23rd of that year, he referred to, quote, Trump's stupidity. In February of 2020, he called out Trump supporters as, quote, too brainwashed to realize how dumb you are. I mean, literally, you guys sound like a cult at times. Later in August 2020, Thomas Crooks issued what sounds a lot like a digital manifesto. Quote, in my opinion, the only way to fight the government is with terrorism-style attacks. Sneak a bomb into an essential building and set it off before anyone sees you.
Make it onto
Track
the
down
FBI's
any
radar.
important people or politicians, military leaders, etc., and try to assassinate them.
Okay, so it's very hard to believe the FBI had evidence of the right coded stuff that Tucker just went through from 2019, and the trail just died when he flipped left and was talking about like terrorism plots openly in YouTube comments, which are absolutely surveilled, in 2020. Like that, if it is just an unfathomable, none of that makes sense whatsoever. And what happened to him also doesn't make sense. I mean, Tucker points out that some of the source material shows he has interaction with someone named Willie Tepes, who is linked to a European Antifa group, and that Crooks's YouTube comments seem to stop after the interactions with Tepes, who also seem to be encouraging violence on behalf of Crooks. I mean, this story has gone from weird to weirder. I mean, it's gone from weirder to even weirder, basically, hasn't it?
Well, and Willie Tepes, I guess, is part of a group, a foreign group that has been declared by the State Department as a domestic or as a terror organization. I guess a foreign terror organization. So I would presume, this is what we're saying, we would presume that the federal government would be surveilling the communications of American citizens with declared terror organizations. Again, it doesn't make sense that they're completely unaware, that they've been completely unaware of any of this. And to the credit of the current FBI, they haven't said that they weren't aware necessarily. They just haven't said anything. And I think people are getting antsy. I think the president of the United States is frankly getting antsy. Miranda Devine has reported out in the piece that you mentioned in the New York Post that the admin is not happy that we haven't had any answers on these questions. I think they deserve them. Somebody, I'm looking at your live chat right now, Emily. Somebody commented MK Ultra, and I don't know if it's MK Ultra, but I will say his behavior is quite bizarre. I don't know if they really discontinued MK Ultra or if they got the information they needed and the program still continues. It lives on. Maybe our CIA still uses it to radicalize people. We don't know. And the point is that there's no trust. And so to just say, and this current FBI, trust me, bro, we got it handled. There's not much here. He's a lone actor, and we got it handled. It's just not going to be enough.
MK Ultra, of course, a reference to the confirmed CIA program that was experimenting on unwitting American citizens with drugs for years during the Cold War. And that's where I think Tucker was alluding to why Crooks's body was cremated without the county coroner, who said he would have been being aware of what was actually going on in this case. Would there have been toxicology that could have been challenged or raised questions? And that sounds wildly conspiratorial, and it seems extremely bizarre and hard to believe. But Evita, actually the entire story is hard to believe. So I'm wondering, obviously, Dan Bongino. I don't know if you know Kash Patel. You probably know Kash Patel. But what are you looking to see from them going forward in this case?
Listen, I know Dan. I don't know Kash. I've met Kash once, but I don't think that either of these men are trying to hide the truth. I don't think that, because I remember when the assassination attempt happened, and I'm somebody who could uniquely speak to this. I mean, Dan was horrified, and we covered it every single day for months. Like on his show, he was relentlessly covering the story. Like you can look back at the archive of Dan Bongino shows, and he cared about this topic very deeply, and he was furious about what happened. I just think we need more transparency. And I also want to point out, as we talk about all of these issues, Jeffrey Epstein, Thomas Crooks, even the pipe bomber, which we're not going to get to tonight, but I mean, this is another issue that's been kind of going viral on the internet. they're probably dealing with a very hostile agency. We have two good guys who were in at the top, and we can't, deny the fact that there is probably a lot of inaction. You're dealing with something that happened under the Biden admin, and who knows what information is left, if any at all, that could point to a conspiracy if there is one. I don't know. I know that Dan cares about this issue, so it's hard for me to say Dan is in on some sort of conspiracy, as some people are suggesting, because I just don't believe that that's true. But there are so many weird things, Emily. So you're right. He should have not have been cremated so quickly, because then no other agencies other than the FBI were able to actually look into his body and do their own report or do their own investigation. You had the FBI like cleaning off the top of the building the very next day. Why were they doing that? Usually, I guess, according to Tucker Carlson, they have that job outsourced to a third party, but the FBI themselves under the Biden admin did this. The parents of Thomas Crooks, interestingly, very lower class individuals, they couldn't pay for his funeral fees, but for some reason they've been able to acquire a very high-end, expensive lawyers to represent them. How did that happen? Who's paying for it? There's so many questions that are unanswered, and trust me, bro, is just not going to cut it.
Well, let's move on to the parallels between crooks, as we learned from Miranda Devine's report, and the suspected shooter, Tyler Robinson, in the Charlie Kirk assassination. Miranda uncovered information that showed Crooks had, quote, 2 possible accounts on DeviantArt, a site that hosts fan art and has become notorious for its community of furries, people who identify as anthropomorphized animal characters and or are sexually attracted to them. One of the DeviantArt accounts linked to Crooks shared just one post, a repost of a towering, muscular female bodybuilder and a slight man in his underwear. Now, there's a YouTuber named Turkey Tom who has a video with about 1 million views that was posted a couple of weeks back. And Turkey Tom, interestingly, and yes, I am seriously referring to him as Turkey Tom because that's what he goes by, said he got a message from a third party who was close to both Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs, Robinson's lover, who was close to both of them and remained in contact with them for like 6 years, was in Discord servers with them. And the only other people who have this knowledge, according to Turkey Tom, is the FBI, who also redacted some of these messages in order to prevent the identity of the source from coming out. Now, the source, or from being revealed. So the source said that Lance Twiggs had said he was taking black market HRT, was growing breasts, that after the election, Tyler Robinson had become much more political, left-wing, that Twiggs would be doodling erratically in ways that made people think he needed an exorcism. And also, of course, that Tyler had a DeviantArt where Tyler Robinson went by they, them, and an account on something called Fur Affinity. And so just to be clear, I mean, let's go ahead and roll this clip of Turkey Tom about Tyler Robinson's online presence. This is S3.
Tyler had a few blurbs of unusual online presence that I hadn't seen. For example, he had a DeviantArt under his older handle, Crafton247, where he lists himself as they/them. It's not possible for this account to belong to someone else that created it after the assassination, as it was created 2 years ago. Then we have another account with the same exact handle, this time on Fur Affinity, but there doesn't seem to be any significant activity on it, just like on DeviantArt. And for those of you who don't know, Fur Affinity is like the furry website. It's the #1 furry website, okay? That Tyler clearly set most of his settings to more private options, which, again, is pretty reflective of the kind of guy he was. Given the testimony from Tyler and Lance's friend, even people who knew them in real life and frequented their living space only ever caught glimpses of the exact nature of their relationship. Based on the last few months prior to Charlie Kirk's assassination, as far as I understand, they weren't really having anyone over, and their output of messages to their online friends also significantly decreased.
Okay, Evita. So you and I have gone back and forth for years privately when we chat because I have interviewed many parents whose children fell into the sort of pains of gender dysphoria and were trying to socially transition or medically transition. And a lot of times almost every time actually, what I would hear is that their children were into anime world. And this sounds like cringe millennial lecturing a Zoomer like Evita on this, but I think there's something to, I mean, basically, first of all, just every Zoomer is into anime. I get that. I do think there's a sort of dark side of online anime world, if you're like really into the forums, that plays with gender. And when gender became so politicized after 2016, there became a political element to that type of posting. You are already laughing at me, so tell me why I'm wrong, Evita.
I just don't think that's true, Emily. Like that, like anime is a medium. Like it's like saying like it's those damn phones. It's like, yeah, but I also could have the Holo app on my phone. As you know, I don't think that anime in and of itself is evil or is a pipeline to transgenderism. Certainly, various Reddit forums or Discord channels where I guess they're into anime transgenderism is not good. It's bad. It'll lead you down a bad path. But you could say that about any Discord chat or any Reddit forum that's not necessarily anime that could lead you down the path of transgenderism. So I don't think anime is the source here. I do think that this kid was certainly. What's interesting when you actually listen to the full Turkey Tom video is the people that were in his Discord channel, the one that of course came forward and was giving this citizen journalist all the information, actually knew Lance, and said that he really was in a bipartisan group chat. Like there were a lot of different opinions going on here. Nobody was really transgender that he knew of other than Lance. Some people were actually sort of conservative and espoused sort of conservative ideals and Christian ones after it was, revealed that their friend in the chat was arrested for the murder of Charlie Kirk. So I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting that people are blaming certain mediums, and even the medium themselves, even Discord is not really indicating that was the cause of the radicalization.
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous. I don't disagree with that. I am though. Let's talk about the similarity here with Crooks and Robinson, just in that we're going to hear a lot about being very online and all of that, like angry young men. I mean, I guess there are some eerie parallels that you have. It's kind of awkward. Loner type young guys ish. And they both happen to have some furry world connections. In fact, they both had accounts on furry websites, it looks like, and went by they, them. Actually, I shouldn't say they both had accounts on furry websites because Crooks, I think we're just talking about a DeviantArt, which is like people who do graphic design and animation use DeviantArt. So that's not necessarily telling, but they had they, them pronouns, or Crooks had they, them pronouns. And we see Robinson with they, them pronouns as well. That to me, whether or not anime was a gateway drug, let's speak to just how odd that is in and of itself, Evita.
Well, I mean, it's something that we're not really allowed to talk about anymore. I mean, the LGBTQ movement says that all of these identities are identities that you're born with, that they're unchangeable, and that there is no mental health element to any of this, and clearly there is. I mean, how many mass shootings have we seen in recent memory where somebody is identifying not as their given sex? I mean, it's too many to count these days, and so to deny the mental health element, I think is a misstep. I also think it's a misstep to deny the spiritual element. I mean, one of the most disturbing and yet fascinating parts of that video, Emily, is the report, unproven, but still the report that Lance's parents kicked him out of the house because they said he was demonically possessed. Well, what does that say? That his friend was saying he was acting demonically possessed as he was talking to ChatGPT for hours and hours on end in random symbols and in Greek and Latin. My Catholic alarm bells are going off. This kid was possessed. Like I'm totally freaked out by it. And I do think maybe it's not anime that's the gateway drug. ChatGPT could be it. I don't know if you agree with that, Emily, but I am deeply disturbed by the amount of conversations people are having with ChatGPT, people being driven to suicide, or I guess weird sexual ideations, or even communicating as if they're talking to a demon in random symbols and in Greek and Latin. That is deeply disturbing to me.
Yeah, there's some very disturbing examples of ChatGPT's outputs coming out of nowhere, like left field, with the craziest responses. Megan Basham posted one recently, just like jaw-dropping stuff. And we're all bearing the realization, as we learned it, that the guy who is now alleged to have started the fire in California last January was fantasizing or using ChatGPT to sort of fuel fantasies of arson and wildfire. And that story is like going absolutely nowhere. Another young man, I'll just add. So I guess I'm curious in your perspective of the chicken or egg question, Evita, is just like, is it that the gender confusion produces this, is the gender confusion what gives way or what kind of gives birth to the misery and the agony and the loneliness and the confusion, or does something come before that and it's sort of a symptom of a deeper rooted spiritual problem, mental health problem? Is it sort of that we see so many mentally unwell people who are dabbling in gender confusion just because they're mentally unwell, and that's sort of in vogue right now for Gen Z people on the internet? Or is it that they get exposed to confusing gender stuff and then go down these rabbit holes that pull them deeper into misery?
Well, I think obviously before somebody starts to identify as not their given sex, there has to be a spiritual discontent initially, but the dressing, the outward expression of gender dysphoria, maybe actually genital mutilation, or of hormone hormone therapy and all the different things that they do, chemical castration, that I think exacerbates the spiritual crisis, because then you are outwardly not acting out biological reality. You are giving the middle finger to God himself, would be my Christian perspective, and that will, I think, fuel the mental illness, fuel the spiritual crisis within you. And so I think it's so scary to see how many young people are falling down this rabbit hole. It is a social contagion. Hopefully it's growing out of fashion. I think slowly it is. But there are still way too many people who, before they can buy a scratch-off ticket, are having their bodies, their minds, and their spirits literally destroyed by this cancerous ideology that clearly is cancerous. I mean, you'll know them by their fruits. What are we looking at right now? This is the destruction of the soul and of society with this social contagion.
All right, Evita, I want to get your take on this clip of Scott Galloway on Real Time with Bill Maher, November 14th, so last Friday, about how changes in society and work culture since the pandemic have affected younger people. Here's S7.
The second worst thing to happen to young people is remote work. 1 in 3 relationships begin at work. This is where you find friends, mentors, and mates, and especially young men need the guardrails of a workplace. But in my view, the worst thing that's happened to young people is the anti-alcohol movement. I've had Huberman on, who I'm a big fan of, and Attia on, and my point is that the risks to your 25-year-old liver are dwarfed by the risk of social isolation. In sum, think of all the amazing relationships you've had in your life and be honest. Did alcohol play a role? In sum, get out, drink more, and make a series of bad decisions that might pay off.
Yes!
Evita, you are both Maha and Wisconsin. How do you reconcile these two?
Okay, well, I don't drink, so and it's not some like valiant choice, like, oh, I'm anti-drinking. I don't like alcohol. I don't think it tastes good. I don't think it makes me feel good, and I don't drink. And I will, but I'll say, I do think that it contributes to some antisocial behavior in young people. It's just kind of an excuse not to go out, not to see people. You'd prefer to, I mean, there's so much entertainment now. There is Netflix, there is scrolling, there is like ChatGPT you can have a conversation with, that sometimes it feels, I think for a lot of young people, draining to even go outside and put in the effort of making friends. And so maybe not drinking alcohol is kind of an excuse. I think you can always go out. When somebody asks me out to go for a drink, I just get a non-alcoholic drink and still hang out. I mean, it shouldn't be a deterrent if you want to be healthy and you don't want to drink alcohol. I also think that the work thing is fascinating and probably true, but I can't really compare it to anything, Emily, because like a classic Zoomer, I've never had an in-person job. I did have one in-person job. I worked in the basement of my school library where I worked with one other person in book lending, and it wasn't really an office space. So I really have never had an in-person job. I don't know what I'm missing, but probably something. There's probably some truth to that.
Yeah, and especially when you think about those, what you just said is so important that you don't have anything to compare it to, because I think that's something your generation is going to struggle with a lot. And it's not, every generation has its own problems, and it would be silly to deny that there's, or to say that there's some type of generational hierarchy at this point. But your generation does not have the before pandemic kind of young professional experience. And some people seem to be taking that in like a trad direction. And then other people seem to just be burying themselves deeper in these online rabbit holes. So assure us, Evita, that there are normal people out there who are having normal human experiences.
Well, I think there's a lot of young people who know that we are missing something and they're striving for normalcy. Like a lot of them. People will talk about the Trump numbers with young people, and they're like, "Oh, he's not doing great with them." No, it's not because they're becoming more Sora Mamdani. For a lot of young people, it's that they don't think he's being right wing enough. Like that. That is where we are with a lot of young people, especially young men. They are thirsting for traditionalism, for conservatism, because we literally have hit rock bottom. We have seen our friends be tranced. We have been subjected to critical race theory and the mask mandates and no prom and no sports. And it's destructive, and the antisocial behavior, and people are looking for something different. And they want something new. And I think right-wing populism is very attractive to a lot of young people. And there is really a golden ticket opportunity for Republicans if they're willing to take it.
Evita Duffy Alfonso, it's so fascinating to check in with you. Independent journalist, make sure to give Evita a follow. Thank you for staying up late and coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Okay, let's close the show by talking about the crazy case of Dasha Nekrasova of Red Scare fame, of course, being canceled by her talent agency in the year of our Lord 2025. It reminded me immediately of this incredible post on X from earlier this month. This is from Maya Luna, who said in response to this NHL post in November of 2022, "Trans women are women, trans men are men, non-binary identity is real." That is from the official National Hockey League X account. Maya just said, "Take me back. Take me back." It is crazy to think back on 2022, which was not that long ago, 3 years ago, and realize posts like this from the NHL were absolutely 100% the norm. And that was radicalizing to younger generations because they saw these corporate accounts. Maybe they were on the left, maybe they were in the center, maybe they're on the right, but especially people on the left would see these major corporations saying things like trans women are women, trans men are men, non-binary identity is real. And they look at it and say, well, okay, you are a major corporate entity and you are right now just doing like rainbow washing to protect yourself. And you see that growing up and think there's something deeply weird, whether you're the left, right, or the center. I think we kind of forget how some of those posts actually affected younger people on the left who looked at that and just saw it for how ridiculous it was, granted from a left-wing perspective. But everyone, left and right, could look at that and just laugh. Nobody wanted to say it aloud at the time, but now we can look back. It's just been 3 years and laugh at the hilarity of the NHL thinking it made some sort of profound statement, which really executives were using as a shield by posting that trans men are men and trans women are women. But my point is, this feels like a different era. And again, it happened really quickly. The change happened really quickly, but it's not over. And this has been a persistent theme here on After Party, because you'll remember a couple of weeks into the show, I went to the Aspen Institute as a fellow at this year's Aspen Ideas Festival. And my dispatch from there, we had Bat Younger Sargon on the show. My dispatch was basically like, holy smokes, these people are stuck in 2022. And it wasn't the Zoomers, it was the millennials. It wasn't Gen X, it was the millennials. Maybe some boomers, but mostly it was the millennials who still had the pronouns in the bio. We're still doing breakout affinity groups, so based on race and gender, sexual orientation, still sort of engaging in that type of organizing. And it was fascinating. So here we have the case of Dasha from Red Scare being... I'll put this up on the screen. This is a New York Post report. Succession actress Dasha Nekrasova dropped by talent agency after podcast with far-right commentator Nick Fuentes. They go on to say, the Post says, Dasha Nekrasova, a podcaster and actress who appeared on Succession, has been fired from her talent agency Gersh following a controversial podcast appearance. The spokeswoman for the agency confirmed the news to Variety. The actress, 34, was let go after she and her co-host Anna Kachian had far-right commentator Nick Fuentes on their Red Scare podcast. Just pausing for a moment, that happened weeks ago. Fuentes was on Red Scare weeks ago. Before he was on Tucker's show, this happened weeks ago. So Dasha Nekrasova is an actress and a podcaster. You may detest Nick Fuentes. You may think he is a scourge on the body politic. I think he is obviously bigoted. You can think all of those things and then realize the absurdity of an actress who is not a politician, who is not a lawmaker, but has a talk show podcast where love, nothing but love for Anna and Dasha, who I've been listening to since they started, they don't even turn on their microphones sometimes. Like the last episode, like they had recorded for like 10 minutes and then realized they didn't have the microphones on. This is insane. It's insane. And everyone can see that it's insane now and people can say it aloud, but we are getting a glimpse of the future, which is as we come up on a year after the 2024 election, the vibe shift election, and we go into the Trump 2.0 resistance, people are once again going to start feeling emboldened to, if they believe in canceling someone, once again, bringing that cancel culture back. When you're at, like, for example, a talent agency, and you start to be concerned that someone could cost your bottom line, or that you are going to, it's not worth the trouble of standing up and defending someone who, again, is an actress. She's an artist. What is the Camille Paglia line that I love so much from the middle of the Me Too movement? This was in, I want to say it was the Hollywood Reporter in the middle of the Me Too movement. She said, the idea of the artist as a moral paragon was, quote, a sentimental canard of Victorian moralism. Beautiful line, perfect line. And a great reflection on Me Too from the thick of it at the time. But this idea that artists should be moral actors, I mean, this Red Scare people love because it's this totally unfiltered exploration of popular culture and politics. It is not developing party platforms. It's not involved in any sort of partisan project whatsoever. It is literally two people who barely know how to use the microphones. Again, I say that with all love and respect, talking about politics and pop culture in the most casual way that you could imagine. And I actually think the podcast is a great outlet for people who, especially over the course of the Me Too movement and then cancel culture and Trump 1.0, Trump 2.0, had all of these thoughts in their head and nobody was saying them aloud. Right? There weren't a lot of people who were just talking. And the people who were willing to talk helped get us to a better place. But us kind of being in that post-vibe shift, better place right now, doesn't mean that millions of millennials who are now haunting the halls of human resources departments and, the world of marketing and public relations are just going to give up, especially as we get further and further from what felt like the vibe shift. So these examples, there will be many such cases to come. And the absurdity of it all remains true. It remains as true as it was in 2022 when the NHL was tweeting that trans men are men. And here we are in 2025 saying the same thing once again. All right. That does it for us on today's edition of After Party. Make sure to subscribe. It helps us enormously. You can shoot me an email at emily@doublemake-media.com, and we'll see you back here on Wednesday with another edition of After Party.